Welcome to Chasing Care. On today's episode, we have the founder and chief executive of Milbotix and also the co-founder Jacqui Arnold from Milbotix. Milbotix was a company founded to improve access to digital technologies for people with unmet needs in the healthcare sector. Consistent with their aim, they've pledged to donate 10% of their profits to charitable causes, which I always love to hear about. Not enough done for charities in our sector, that's for sure. So before we start, what I'd like to do is introduce Zeke and Jacqui. Welcome to the Chasing Care podcast, both of you. It's lovely to have you on, and I really, truly am fascinated to hear what we're going to talk about in a little while. But first, Zeke, paint a thumbnail for those people that don't know you.
Absolutely, yeah, it's great to be here. So I'm the CEO of Milbotix. Originally qualified as electronics engineer, then went and spent about 10 years working in defence. It was whilst I was working in defence that I had a personal experience with dementia, which really touched me, which was through my great-grandmother, Kath. She sadly developed dementia, became aggressive, and that then led to a period of PhD research in Bristol, which laid the groundwork for our product. And I will tell you a little bit about that shortly.
That's amazing. Jacqui, just paint a thumbnail for our listeners about who you are, please.
Certainly. Hi, so my name's Jacqui. I have about 40 years of experience in health and social care. So I've worked as a carer, managed care homes, managed training and development, and was finally a dementia lead for an organisation. And that's where I met Zeke when he was doing his PhD research into the smart socks.
Okay, so personal experience of a loved one who suffered from dementia triggered this. We hear a lot, don't we, in the sector at the moment about technology is going to assist the care sector. I've been a bit sceptical, I must admit, because I do often worry about what that means. We talk about AI at the moment as well, replacing people in industry. But you know what? I've always thought this personal touch is more important than anything else. But you're coming at it from a slightly different perspective today when we talk about technology, wearable tech. And I'm actually on exactly the same page, which is why I wanted you both on here today, because it's about dealing with the user's acceptance and also how the care worker can then use that technology without putting themselves in a difficult situation. So in a nutshell, what is the challenge you think that you're trying to fix in Milbotix?
One of the difficulties for a lot of people who have limited communication is identifying their needs to other people. And so Zeke, with his technology, was looking at a way of enabling people to have their distress recognised by carers through sending an alert. And I think in terms of acceptance of wearables, a lot of people who are living with dementia don't like to wear wristwatches. They don't like things on their arms. They certainly don't want to wear something that makes them stand out from the crowd. And so therefore smart socks were an invention that appeared to meet the individual's needs as well as alert carers to their needs when they couldn't alert them themselves.
So smart socks is the way forward, is it? Is that what we're looking at today?
Yeah, and as Zeke will tell you, there's a scientific reason for socks as well.
Okay, let's dive into the science of it all and bamboozle people like me.
I would just add, Gavin, we do fall into the AI camp. We are using AI within our product, but its purpose is not to replace the carer, but to assist them, to enable them to respond in a more timely manner, but also to provide the right type of support for that person. So very person-centered, to use AI in a way that's productive.
So let me just stop you there and let's step back. I've jumped in with wearable tech with a naive head on, which is, oh, you're going to put it on and then something's going to happen and then you just deal with it there and then because it's happened. But you're saying there's a lot more to wearable tech these days. Explain that to me, would you?
Yeah, so the wearable is only one element of the solution. It collects the data. You know, the challenge that the carer typically faces is how do they then process that data? How do they act on it in a way that is meaningful for that person's care? And it's through the AI that we're able to deliver insights to the carer that they can then act on.
So it's not like my Apple Watch then.
I don't.
I have to make decisions, don't I? I mean, I look at the data. It's visual to me.
Yeah.
It goes onto my phone maybe, but nobody else would really. Well, I suppose Apple might be looking at the data, but I don't know what they do with it.
I think the decision still falls down to the carer. It's up to them to decide what the most appropriate way is of managing that person's distress ultimately. But we want to help them to respond sooner and to provide some sort of guidance that will help them make the right decisions for that person.
So paint a picture as to how you see this working day to day. My loved one, she needs care. She's being supported currently. But you're saying what? What more are you adding here?
The idea is that for somebody who is experiencing distress, and people who are living with dementia or other conditions experience all different types of distress. It might be anxiety, it might be they're unable to understand the context of the situation, they might be in pain, they might not be able to reposition themselves. So all of those elements we would term as distress if they went on for too long and were unmet needs. And so in a real situation, the person would be wearing the socks, the carer would have an app on their phone, and the socks would generate an alert based on the person's physiological measures. So the app would then alert the carer that the person was either experiencing some form of medium or high distress. And the idea is that that distress would be identified at a much earlier stage than the carer might ordinarily notice. And that's what is unique about it. We wouldn't be waiting until the person was really quite highly distressed for that alert to be sent to the carer. So the carer receives an alert, would be able to respond to the person and then provide assistance to that person, which could be anything that they believe will support the person. It could be pain relief, it could be sitting down, talking with the person, it could be putting on the person's favourite music, entertaining them, moving out of the space that might be distressing them. And so the app gives the carers a selection of possible triggers, what might have started and caused the distress, and they can respond to that, as well as the type of behaviour that the person is displaying, as well as the support that they provided that person with and whether that support was useful and helpful. And all of that information then becomes a digitised diary so that the carer is then able to look back over time and to identify maybe the times of day, the certain situations that are causing the most distress, and so longer term should be able to assist that person with a better plan of care to help to reduce those situations repeating.
I can see what how that would work. What sort of environments are we talking about here? I mean, it would work very well if somebody was there 24/7 with the individual who's got the wearable on. But what about the care worker that comes in for a few hours a day? Because not everyone has 24/7 care, do they? How do you see that working for the people that are only visited a couple of times a day?
Yeah. So currently the product is more designed for people living in residential care or living with somebody 24/7. So
okay.
You know, their carer who may be unpaid is there all of the time. I also have personal experience of my dad having dementia, and I know that my mum wasn't always able to recognise his distress, and so for people in a similar situation, it could assist unpaid carers who are caring for somebody and living with them to understand and be able to better manage that distress. Longer term, we are going to be looking at maybe slight variations in the app so that it would be able to be used much more for people who don't live with somebody 24/7, and would be able to alert carers who aren't in the vicinity all of the time.
I could get that. Then there's a balance, isn't there?
Yes.
In those environments, we talk about trying to. Local authorities, for example, they just don't have the money to pay for the level of care necessarily that we want, and even in the private sector, families really don't want to have to pay thousands of pounds a week if they can pay hundreds of pounds. So there will be an ideal scenario, won't there, where you could have this remote tech, if you like, which allows the care worker not to be there. But then the challenge is always, how do you cover that gap? How do you get there if the distress is being identified? So I can see how it would work more in that 24/7 or that live-in care or care home environment.
Yes.
How does the technology work, Zeke? A sock? I didn't ask the question. Why a sock? Why not a hat or a pair of underpants or something rather? But just explain that to me.
Yeah, there are really two reasons. So one is in terms of usability. A lot of people with dementia, learning disabilities, autism will find it uncomfortable using conventional wrist-worn device, meaning that it will be taken off and it might end up getting lost or, in extreme cases, thrown away. The other reason is obviously a lot of older people with dementia will struggle to reach down to remove a sock. So again, it's much more likely to remain on that person, out of sight, out of mind. The technical reason is that the soles of the feet, along with the palms of the hands, are actually the best location on the human body for measuring a parameter called electrodermal activity, which is a sweat response. And that's one of the mechanisms through which we're able to detect these signs of distress. So yeah, it provides better performance than, for example, a wrist-worn device at sensing that particular parameter.
It sounds fascinating to me. They've got to be washable, though. So,
Indeed, yeah.
So I just you got the moisture. I don't know. You've lost me. But the technology works, obviously. But I mean, dig a little bit deeper for me, really, and how that works.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I was doing through my research was taking generally mostly older but healthy participants through a range of stressful scenarios whilst they were using conventional wearables alongside an early research version of the smart socks. And so, for example, people were going through and experiencing pain, or they were going through and experiencing social anxiety. All the time, I was collecting physiological data from these different wearable devices and subsequently analyzing that data to see how those parameters changed in response to different forms of stress. And what we've done is to take those findings and put them into this algorithm, which is our real key innovation. It's something that nobody else has. And that's what sits at the core of the smart socks. So we're collecting the physiological data. Now all of it's being collected through the sock. We're not using the wearables, but we're keeping that same AI, understanding how people's physiological responses change in response to stress. And on the basis of that, then generating the alerts, which go through to the carer via the app. That's in a nutshell, without getting too detailed.
Can I put them in my washing machine?
Yes.
Yes, you can.
Yes, you can.
Only at 30 degrees though currently. So we are looking at how we can increase the temperature tolerance, obviously for infection control reasons.
Can I put them in with a whitewash?
Yes, we will have a range of colours. Yeah, we're just grey, but we are.
Oh, that sounds like my washing.
Does it? Yeah, you like your greys.
That's what they all end up as. All the whites end up as grey, so I can put it in with the colours as well. You haven't yet brought it to market. You're in that testing phase, aren't you?
Yeah.
Correct.
Is it going to be expensive? I mean, new to market often means expensive. Do you think it's going to be affordable by the private sector, or do you think that the local authorities, public sector, will be interested in what you're trying to deliver here?
Yeah, we've had interest from private individuals, local authorities, care organisations. There's a lot of interest in the product. Obviously, we want to ensure that it is affordable. That's really key. Part of that is through the business model that we are proposing to deliver the product through, which will be a subscription plan with a monthly fee alongside a one-off payment. So it'll be a regular recurring fee every month. And what that enables us to do as well is to ship out fresh batches of socks as the original batch wears out, alongside, hopefully, providing fresh batteries to go with it. So we're trying to streamline the whole process of using the socks. They can be, obviously used on an ongoing basis, fresh batches delivered to the user so that they can keep using them and never having to recharge the batteries. That's really key. And it's all part and parcel of that business model.
Yeah. Have you researched what colour dementia patients like their socks?
I think people living with dementia probably have their own individual preferences. We know that for people with autism, who are another group of people who may very well benefit from the socks, we're looking at possibly having socks that they can personalise, because that's really important to quite a few people who are living with autism. So we're looking at producing a different range of socks, not necessarily the grey ones that we have currently.
If you are able to identify the trend and the frustration in somebody, what is that achieving, do you think, from the carer's perspective and for the individuals that are struggling with that distress at that moment?
I think for me, I think it's all about increased well-being for all. I think it means that for the carers, they're not watching the person that they love or care for, going through distress. And so that enables them to increase their well-being. In professional situations, it also means that it enables carers to spend far more time providing positive support for people than the time it can often take to de-escalate a situation if it's really escalated. So if somebody's distress has gone unnoticed or unmanaged for any length of time, my experience as a carer, if I've managed to support somebody really early on, it might take 5 minutes of my time before the person, reaches a point of well-being. If somebody's distress is really heightened, by the time I've managed to get to them, then it can take up to 3/4 of an hour, another 3/4 of an hour of my time and their time in distress. So increased well-being is really key for us, as well as better time management.
You talked about a couple of areas. Dementia was one of them that this will work for, and autism you just mentioned. Any other areas at all?
I think anybody who struggles with communication and communicating their needs. We've also spoken with people in the early stages of dementia who said that this would be useful maybe to alerting clinicians to their changing states, so that they can go along and say, look, this is when I'm becoming anxious, this is the frequency, because it's often difficult to provide that sort of evidence to clinicians, GPs, in the early stages of dementia. It
raises another question in my mind, which you talked about clinicians there. You're grabbing data. Do you see this as on a subscription service, a service where you're going to be analysing that data so you can compare outcomes and scenarios of distress in, let's say, the dementia patients, that you can then share with clinicians? Is that part of the story here? I'm always mindful of individuals' rights for anonymity and the GDPR scenario and all these things. How do you see that working, Zeke?
So we, alongside the app, will have an API, an application programming interface, which enables the data that's gathered from the socks to be shared with third parties, obviously with the customer's consent. Those third parties could include NHS organisations. They could include digital social care platforms. We're actively forming those partnerships now with a view to, enabling the best possible impact through the data that's collected. And that's something we're really excited about. But the privacy is obviously key.
Just to add to that, I think, talking about user acceptance, as we were at the beginning, it's really important for certainly professional carers who have lots of different possible pieces of technology to monitor all sorts of different things in the care home, that if we can simplify the socks connecting with other existing applications that they already use, then that increases user acceptance and usability of the smart sock. So maybe linking to electronic care planning or other systems that they already have in place.
Yeah, when we're talking about wearables which are acceptable to the wearer, which is amazing. I can't think of anything else out there that I've heard of that is comparable to what you're doing today. But what does it align close to in terms of existing technologies, in terms of wearables? What is it? Is it grabbing the same sort of information that others have been recovering, but in a different form? Or is this a totally new thought process in terms of how you're grabbing that data?
It's a good question. So there are devices out there, primarily devices that are used within research settings that collect similar physiological parameters. They don't provide the same level of analysis that we do through our AI. So that would be a case of a researcher sitting down, analysing that data statistically, reaching some conclusions that might then be reported in a paper, an academic publication. What we're trying to do with our tech is make that same level of analysis accessible for people on the front lines of care, so that they can deliver, much better care through that mechanism.
And it's almost real time, isn't it, from using your AI to look at that data?
That's right. Yep, indeed. So because the socks use Wi-Fi, we buffer the data up for a minute before we transmit it in order to save power. But within that 1 minute period, we're potentially providing actionable insights that the carer can use to enhance their care.
Doctors are going to love this, aren't they?
Yes.
Well,
we've had interest. We've had interest from GPs.
Yeah, well, it's better than I don't know. It reminds me of the story of the woman that can smell things like dementia. Was it? I think it was
Parkinson's.
Parkinson's, yeah.
Heard about that.
mean, it's a little bit more reliable, I'm guessing, than this woman might be able to sniff it out. Although socks, we always have a laugh, don't we, about wearing socks and the smell of wearing the socks. I wonder if there'll be a smell that you could work on, but
maybe in future on the roadmap.
But in real time, though, I mean, if your loved one is suffering from some form of dementia, or we feel that they may be moving in that direction, it's not always a subject that you want to raise with them. And you've got to find maybe the Christmas present is a pair of socks, which will certainly help them. But I'm just thinking the bigger picture. It's the world of medicine is, if they could have this data and they could then look at what's happening across the UK with hundreds and hundreds of people, it will be a database which will be absolutely phenomenal.
Oh, indeed. I was just going to say, with the additional context that's gathered through the app, it's not just the physiological data that we're collecting, but also observations of how people are behaving. If you tie those together, maybe you link it in with other things in the environment, interactions with carers, you can really understand a lot about that person and maybe a population at large.
Yeah, probably even analyze it in a way that we've never thought about analyzing it before. Because you've got it in tune with the real life interactions of a third party at that moment. And is it consistent? Exactly. Is it repeatable? Fascinating. It's a fascinating subject. I'll tell you this for nothing. And where do you think it's going to go next? I'm not asking you for your next trade secret, if you like, but where do you think wearables and acceptance by the user and all these things, how do you see it moving forward over the next 5-10 years?
Are you asking about the industry?
Yeah, just broadly about the industry. What do you think the industry is going to bring to the table in the care sector?
Well, within wearables, I know there's a big movement afoot to look at smart textiles, clothing. How can clothing be used? And obviously that's where we fit. Jacqui might have a more holistic view of the industry and where that's moving. So I'll hand over to her on that one.
I think care organisations are moving more towards using technology and embracing technology. And I think that since COVID, as you know, people are now using more things like iPads, and so technology is becoming more prevalent in terms of wearables. I think as long as something can prove its worth and is seen to have benefits for people, then I think the care industry and carers will embrace it. It's when wearables don't appear to have much added value that they're maybe not accepted, or where it would appear that the technology is trying to take over the role of the carer, that it's not embraced. And I think these wearables are there to assist the carer, not to say that the carer's role isn't important, because it's still the carer that's going to be analysing that data initially and providing the much needed support to the person.
Yeah. And I will say, Gavin, just to add to that, that user research element is really key to the way that we work at Milbotix. We have some fantastic partnerships, including with Alzheimer's Society, who we've been running focus groups with the UK Dementia Research Institute as well. So we're really involving the user at the heart of the development of this product, and we want it to work for everybody. So, gathering those views on the tech, understanding the practical issues around deployment, all really critical to ensuring that it's ultimately successful and that it works in practice, not just in theory.
Have you been speaking to the Care Quality Commission at all? They're very keen on bringing technology into the care sector.
We haven't as yet, but it's on my roadmap to have those discussions.
Well, it's been a fascinating conversation, and thanks for sharing your thoughts on wearables. And I think this is a subject that's just going to grow and grow over time. And I'm pleased that I had the chance to speak to you two today. If anybody's out there and they're thinking, right, socks, that's the thing I want to know about, what do they do? How do they get hold of you, Zeke? How do they get hold of you, Jacqui?
I'd probably recommend contacting Jacqui right now. So, Jacqui, I don't know if you want to share your contact details or point them to the website.
Yep, certainly. So the website, firstly, is Milbotix. So that's Milbotix. And my email address is Jacqui, which is JACQUI @milbotix.co.uk. So people can contact me directly or go through the website. We also have a LinkedIn page, a Facebook page, and Twitter, and that's all Milbotix, Milbotix.
Brilliant.
It's .com. Sorry, milbotix.com. Just to point that out.
Well, we'll make sure that we put it in the links when we put out this podcast as well, so no worries. But Zeke,
amazing.
Jacqui, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. Thank you for sharing time on Chasing Care.
Likewise. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. It's been great.